Good evening, this is ITV1 with Emmerdale ahead at 7. Now a budget response by the Liberal Democrat Treasury spokesman.
Good evening. People normally expect politicians to rubbish their opponents, and I have my criticisms of Gordon Brown and his latest budget. But I want to start by being positive. Britain's avoided financial crisis, living standards for most people have risen, more people are finding work, and I welcome too the additional investment in schools, skills and science. But the budget was very bad news for pensioners. The Chancellor's cancelled a £200 pensioner rebate on council tax, which he all too conveniently provided in the run-up to last year's election. As a result, pensioner households will have to find an extra £200, and this at a time when they're struggling with higher fuel bills. My party believes that council tax is fundamentally unfair. It bears absolutely no relation to people's ability to pay. A millionaire can be paying no more tax than a retired person on a small pension or a low-paid worker. And that's why my party wants to change the whole system of local taxation, linking it to income, as happens in the United States and many parts of Europe. For many families too, times are becoming more difficult. Many are getting heavily into debt, and it's often the only way to pay for a home. Some banks also recklessly encourage people to borrow beyond their means, and the pressures build up. The mortgage, credit card bills, hire purchase repayments, and then all too often the painful consequence, bankruptcy, the family home repossessed. This is happening more and more, and Gordon Brown's economic boom is based on spending and growing household debt, not investment. This is precarious, and it could easily turn to bust. And that's why I've put forward an action plan for government to ensure that families have access to independent, affordable financial advice and a help to avert disaster. Most working families and pensioners now pay considerably more tax than they did a few years ago. And as a result, I believe there is no case now for a further general rise in taxation. What people want is fairer and also simpler, not higher taxes. We can't, of course, have something for nothing, and services need to be paid for. But I want to see taxes cut for people on modest incomes. And there are two ways this can be done. First, the very well-off need to contribute more in line with their ability to pay. And secondly, we should all pay more for activities which cause pollution and damage the planet. Flying is an obvious example. The Chancellor's token environmental measure was to increase the yearly running costs of Chelsea tractors that plug up our roads by £45 a year. Now, this is less than the cost of a tank of fuel and will have no meaningful impact on the environment whatever. It's pathetic. If the level of taxation is not to keep rising, there has to be discipline in public spending. And that means that some things have to be cut in order to support key public services. I want to see decent, properly funded education, health services, policing, and a decent state pension without means testing. But of course there's a cost. Tough choices have to be made. My party, for example, would scrap the government's massively expensive identity card scheme. It's unnecessary, it infringes our traditional British freedoms, and it'll cost a fortune. And do you know how much Iraq has cost us all? Of course, the biggest price is the terrible loss of life. But in financial terms, this illegal, futile war and the occupation which have followed it have so far cost the British taxpayer £4,000 million. And public spending has to be managed properly. As somebody who came into Parliament from the business world, I would say that Gordon has an awful lot to learn about how to manage other people's money. Billions more have been spent on the NHS, yet nurses have been sacked and hospitals closed. The problem is, he tries to control everything himself. He believes that Whitehall always knows best, and it doesn't. We Liberal Democrats have a very different vision of the way ahead for Britain. Taxation that's fairer but not higher, investment for the long term, not short-term expansion based on debt, tough and effective measures on the environment, and decisions on services made by local communities, not by remote quangos and bureaucracies.
That was a budget response by the Liberal Democrat Treasury spokesman.